History can be exciting for some, but for others it can be a bit boring. I'm not sure which camp the designers behind the Assassin's Creed series fell into, but one thing's for sure, they had some fun with their interpretations. There's plenty of examples, let's take a look at a few of them. There's more in our History According to Assassin's Creed article, but for now let's take a closer look at 5 people from history that Ubisoft took some liberties with. Rashid ad-Din Sinan. A rebel in real life, he led a religious sect against King Richard I during the Crusades. He also had a beef with Sultan Saladin, who he tried to assassinate multiple times but failed each and every time. Some say he had mysterious powers or divine status, but he still died in 1192 at his castle in Masyaf. Now, according to Ubisoft in Assassin's Creed 1, Sinan, also known as Al-Mualim, was a tutor to all assassins, but was secretly also a Templar. Eventually he fought Altair, but lost only to be burnt on a pyre. At least they got the location of his death right on that one. Next up, Assassin's Creed 2's Rodrigo Borgia, better known as Pope Alexander VI. In the history books, he was a womanizer, father of many legitimate and illegitimate children, all of which was prohibited by the church. Mostly this pope placed members of his family into roles of power, but no, there's no record that he ever poisoned, murdered, or extorted people for profit. According to Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, however, he murdered Ezio's father, Giovanni Auditore de Firenze, and eventually acquired a staff that gave him godlike powers. In the real world, he never had a staff and died after a bad dinner with his son and the cardinal. What a way to go. While we're on the topic of Assassin's Creed 2, let's talk about Niccolò Machiavelli. Machiavelli was a historian, philosopher, diplomat, writer, politician, and more. His most famous work, The Prince, is supposedly based on the Pope's life, as Machiavelli was his advisor. He was also in charge of the militia in Florence, Italy. After being accused of conspiracy and imprisoned, he was tortured for 3 years before being set free. Once free, he spent much of his time writing and partook in many political discussions. He died in 1527, but a monument was erected in his memory with text written on it that read, "No eulogy would be appropriate to such a great name." In Assassin's Creed 2, the character still had many of the traits his real-life counterpart had, but he was also an assassin. The leader of assassins in Italy, according to the game, and he worked with none other than Ezio to take down the Borgia family and remove them from power. Eventually he stepped down though, as he believed Ezio would be a better leader to the assassins. According to Ubisoft, I can only assume that's when he began his writing. Enough about the Ezio trilogy, let's move on to Assassin's Creed 3 and Israel Putnam, famous for being a real American hero. His biggest moment was during the Battle of Bunker Hill, where it's believed he told William Prescott to shout the famous line, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Putnam was actually a terrible strategist and tactician, and because of this, George Washington had to keep many important commands from him. He had a stroke in 1779 that left him paralyzed, and he died in 1790. In Assassin's Creed 3, Putnam worked with Connor to pull off a few missions, but usually they all ended up with heavy casualties. I guess they kinda got that one right. Finally, let's look at Edward Thatch in Assassin's Creed 4. You may know him as Blackbeard. The man was known by several names, and historians don't know his exact birth date, but we do know he was born wealthy in Bristol, England. He was educated, could read and write, and he used all those smarts to become a privateer. Sometime in 1717, Blackbeard met up with Stede Bonnet and took control of his ship, a ship with a crew on the brink of mutiny. He pirated for many years, but in a final blaze of glory, Blackbeard had a fight with Robert Maynard. After boarding Maynard's ship, an attack broke out as 20 of his men headed in Maynard's ship busted out to help him. In the end, Blackbeard fought Maynard in a sword fight and even broke his opponent's sword during said fight. But eventually, he was cut down by Maynard's crew, sustaining 5 bullet wounds and 20 sword wounds. Ubisoft had a tad more lenience with this character, as there's quite a few gray spots in Blackbeard's history. In the games, he did pilot a ship and at one time planned to retire. Having accepted a pardon in North Carolina, he needed one more big score to retire peacefully, so of course, he continued pirating. In the end, the fight between Blackbeard and Maynard plays out nearly identical to what's in the history books. I guess Ubisoft didn't really need to take any liberties for that part, seeing it was already such a cool story. Well, that's 5 of the ways the Assassin's Creed series reinterpreted history. Want to know about some of the other liberties that were taken in the series? Check out our History According to Assassin's Creed article, and for more on Assassin's Creed, you're already in the right place. IGN.